All right, y'all. So I'm gonna try this YouTube thing. There's been some things going on. Um, I'm a pretty very direct person. um, and so I'm not gonna be for everybody. But that's not why I'm on here. I have just things that have been kind of on my mind in terms of just recent events and the experiences of um, black people, black women, and girls in particular. And I think the one thing that's been bothering me lately has been the Iowa teenager um, who is charged with first degree murder. Her name is Piper Lewis, and she's 17, and she was sentenced um, for involuntary manslaughter after murdering a man who trafficked her. And she's a young black girl in Des Moines, Iowa. And I think this story struck me, and these kind of stories continue to strike me over and over again because it's the same pattern and it's not met with the same kind of concern or outrage or national outreach in terms of the story, the true story and its effects. And this is actually very common among young black girls. Um, she was escaping a situation as a teenager from an abusive adoptive mother. She ran away. Anytime somebody runs away that young, especially now that she's being sentenced for a crime that she committed when she was approximately 15 or 16, because it says it's June 2020, and now we're looking at this in 2022, September 2022. So she's probably about 15. And I think for the judge to still say, hey, this is the best I can do, 5 years, closely supervised probation. The law is the law, unfortunately, and the law does need to be changed. But to still chastise her for her poor decisions, as if a child who runs away from an abusive situation really feels as if they have a choice. There were plenty of times as a child I wish I could have run away because I was mad at my father or mad at my mother. But you know how far I got? Outside on the back porch. And I say that because you have to really reach a level of desperation when that happens. And the idea of victimhood, the idea that things can actually happen to black girls, young black women, and it not be their fault, to be chastised by the judge about poor decisions she made. And we know we can be talking about the same 14, 15-year-old white girl who decided to get drunk and loud at a party or have sex, at an early age and gets pregnant. Then she gets a TV show on MTV, 16 and pregnant. I mean, we've seen it over and over again. How the what should be considered tragic for one is only considered tragic for some. And that kind of stuff, that makes me angry. It makes me angry. I think it's sad. I think the judge chastising her instead of making it clear that, look, within the parameters of the law, the sex trafficking law, well, there or the lack of sex trafficking law, even though I still feel like what came first, the chicken or the egg, and the rape and the trafficking and the constant abuse of men, she was defending herself. And we know if this was someone who was not black, they would be met with certainly more empathy and sympathy than this. And we've seen it over and over again. We've seen it with Centoya Brown. We've seen it with Crystal Kaiser. And look her up, another young black girl in Kenosha, Wisconsin, in a situation where she ultimately ended up killing the man who trafficked her. These are still young women, even as they're being sentenced. They're girls, they're kids. And there are a lot of things that we all have to deal with. When we're talking about, I'm only talking about Piper Lewis. When we're talking about Piper Lewis, we're already dealing with the fact that she had an adopted mother. So it's already that first kind of feeling of, for whatever her background is, this mom who's not exactly mom, right? What happened that somebody didn't want me? Why did, or somebody died? Whatever the case is, mom isn't really mom. Then mom is abusive to her, making her feel unwanted in such a way that she actually manages to escape, sleep in hallways until some 28-year-old guy comes, Zachary Brooks, that's the man's name, and takes her in, right? And any young girl is impressed usually when an older man shows her an attention. I don't mean like an old grandpa man, but like a, a relatively older young man, like a 20-year-old or something. And now that I'm older, I realize the problems with that. But I remember kind of being infatuated with kind of younger, older guys, as a teenager. And, by the grace of God, nothing like that happened to me. But when this happens and people just kind of shrug, or nobody makes these stories in our community as an outrage the same way, our community should be outraged when black men are murdered by the police. Because we know that doesn't happen to everybody. But black women get murdered almost in the same numbers by police. And the community doesn't rally around that. And not the same way. And don't get me wrong, there are many black women and some black men, but mostly black women who come and really have tried to work to make these sort of things better. Whether it's, things like, author Monique Morris, who talks about, in her book Push Out, the trafficking of black girls. And it's a sociological study. And just the way black girls' behavior is interpreted, the way trafficking deters young black girls' ability to get access to an education. And it's very easy to say, well, black women are successful and they get college degrees at high rates. And I think that's great. And that's true to some degree. But then there's this other undercurrent of girls like Piper Lewis, girls who don't grow up to be Stacey Abrams, who don't grow up to be, the Michelle Obamas, who don't get big breaks like the Beyoncés who had two parents, really helping her with her career, as parents should. This is a problem, and it concerns me. I don't have any children. I don't. But I am a black woman who is a black girl. And I think while this video may or may not reach many people, I want to say I stand with Piper Lewis. I want to say I stand with the Ma'Khia Bryants, who was in a foster care situation. That situation was very complicated. But even in that situation where you have a series of girls who have been traumatized by abuse during the foster situation, and Ma'Khia Bryant stabbed and the police watched this happen, there's so many other facts. Yes, the police killed her, and every one of them ought to die in jail or go to jail for an extended period of time and never get out, because they knew what they were doing. They did it on purpose. But then we also have to look at the numbers of black people and grown adult black people. I'm not talking about other teenagers who didn't realize the severity of the situation, but other grown adults who are sitting around or standing around taping it. A fight between young girls, didn't try to break it up either. What the police did, wrong. Criminalized. Or should be. They should not be roaming the streets and should not be allowed to work anywhere else. They should be in prison. They took someone's life. They should be in prison. And they took a child's life. There are so many other ways that even social workers, everybody else knows how to handle. But the police don't have to handle it that way. Certainly not when it's a young black girl. But the black men, the black women who are walking across the street, kind of watching it all go down, still, we have a responsibility to protect our young. And if there's anything I have learned over the years, just as short as something can happen to one person, and you look at it and say, oh, that's a shame, or people are quick to go, well, where were the parents? What were they doing? Yes, that is a problem. But if you are in a position to help or to say something, it is our job to protect young black girls and black women, be it in abusive domestic violence situations, be that sexual molestation, if you hear about it, you notice things, don't sit there and not say anything. And then the problem is, then when we say something, it ought to be taken seriously, investigated, and prosecuted appropriately. Piper Lewis has $150,000 in restitution. If she was being trafficked, she's already had her education disrupted. Now she's under heavy probation. The chances of her getting back on her feet, it's going to be a long, hard road. And she doesn't even get the benefit of being treated as a victim of sexual assault. That was never denied in her case. So this isn't seen as self-defense. And the more I hear about the story, the angrier I get. And, you know, I have the ability, honestly, to write articles and to say something. I don't know who would publish it. But I do know that I have whatever kind of power I do have right now. And that is to say something in regards to Piper Lewis and young black girls as they deal with these things. And, you know, I hope that people will engage with me in efforts to protect young black girls. And as I continue this YouTube journey and discussing things that I'm passionate about, or things that I just enjoy. But right now, this seems like a way I can kind of reach people with what I think is important. So, Piper Lewis, I don't know if you'll ever see this, but just know, black woman to young black girl, I love you. I'm rooting for you. And I want to know what I can do, what people I know can do to help you and other girls in your situation. Okay? You're not alone. I know it probably feels that way, but you're not. Okay. See you all. See you all soon. We'll talk.